Great. Moving on. All right, just a note on some Zoom etiquette, or Zoom tips rather, sorry. If you are a first-time Zoom user or need a reminder of the buttons to use, I encourage you to look at the bottom of your screen where you can find the control panel. This holds several key functions you may wish to use in this meeting, including the chat function, the participant icon where you can find the raise hand button, and the mute and unmute button. And I ask that you keep yourself muted unless you have raised your hand and or talking.
Miranda, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm in the English channel and I can hear the Cape Verdean interpreter talking over you. So I think that something just got a little messed up with the
Okay,
rooms.
thank you. I will try and see what the issue is.
Miranda, yeah, the Cape Verdean is the English. I think she's just in the wrong channel.
Oh,
They're
okay.
just swapped. Yep.
I do not know how to notify her. I can chat her really quickly. It's just the Cape Verdean that you're hearing.
Yeah, I checked the other ones. It seemed to be other languages. So,
Thanks, Ben.
yep.
Let me message her. I can also restart them. Hmm. Does anyone know if you can still hear the Cape Verdean in the English channel?
Yes, they're still in the English channel.
Okay, I'm going to close the rooms and restart them. Please hold. Okay, let me know if that is better. If I'm speaking, Zoom tips, going over everything. Could someone let me know if that's better?
I hear you in the English channel, Miranda.
Only me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Fix that problem. Moving on. Apologies, everyone. Okay. Now we are going on to Zoom etiquette. Great. So lastly, on note on Zoom etiquette, we appreciate everyone taking the time to be here and we want to ensure that this conversation is a pleasant experience for all. We ask that everyone remain muted when you are not speaking to avoid background noise. Use the raise hand function to indicate to the planning staff that you wish to ask a question and wait until you are called upon before asking your question or providing a comment. If you are calling in by phone, please press the number 9 on your dial pad to activate the raise hand function and dial 6 to mute and unmute yourself. If we are unable to get to your question before the meeting is over, please put your question or comment in the chat, or you can email myself. My email is on the screen, or Jason McDonald. I will note Jason McDonald would be here. He's at another public meeting. He will join shortly. Um, all right, and then on to our agenda, we have Chief Shen with us tonight. And then I think I'm passing it over to Norm.
Thank you, Miranda.
Of course.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Ben, for pointing that out to us for sure. So,
Yes, thank you both.
I'd like to say welcome, folks, to the January 12th meeting of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee. Next slide, please. And I'll say on behalf of my co-chair, the co-chair, Steve Godfrey, and the members of the Oversight Committee, again, welcome, sure. Most of you are familiar with the Oversight Committee's responsibilities. for the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee, which was created in 2004 as a result of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan. The Oversight Committee is broadly representative of the Roxbury neighborhood and is made up of mayoral appointees nominated by elected officials, neighborhood associations, and community organizations. The Oversight Committee oversees the implementation of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan and Plan Nubian Square. Next, please. We encourage people to join, engage, and take action with us, to join the Oversight Committee and/or Project Review Committee. Those Though the process for those are closed right now, but if need be, we can address that. To engage and attend public meetings, ask questions, invite neighbors, Roxbury civic groups and organizations, businesses, abutters, and other community affiliates to this and other public meetings. To take action, review and comment on projects, developments, and the planning initiative itself. For more information about upcoming meetings, development, projects, and how to get involved, this is the link. This is the link to the Oversight Committee's webpage on the Planning Department's website. Next, please. The original 2004, yes, master plan goals: to enhance civic and cultural life in the neighborhood, to promote diverse and sustainable growth with jobs for local residents, to ensure safe and convenient public and private transportation, to expand and improve housing for a variety of socioeconomic and age groups, to create a comfortable, lively, and safe public realm that reflects the diversity of local residents, to enhance community participation and empowerment, to increase the accountability of government, institutions, and businesses. Yes, for the source of the original Roxbury Strategic Master Plan. Next, please.
My
Well,
apologies. I
that,
meant to delete this slide. Our next slide is actually this slide.
oh. So we go on to parcel 3, or we'll be moving on to Kairos?
I'm happy to provide some context. So first of all, thank you, Norm, for hosting the Oversight Committee. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kairos Shen. I'm the Chief of Planning, and I'm delighted to be back in front of this Oversight Committee, which I had the pleasure of actually being working with many of you when it was first formed back in 2004. Tonight's main agenda is on parcel P3. And the reason why we're here spending the bulk of the agenda talking about P3 is really in light of the recent news that the city has been invited by the State School Building Authority to participate in the next phase of a feasibility study for constructing a new Madison Park vocational school. Now, in order to preserve the greatest optionality for this upcoming process for siting the new Madison Park School with the community, we believe that P3 must be included in the feasibility study. We believe that letting the current designation expire for P3 is the most transparent and prudent course of action when the city has identified a public purpose and another potential path forward for this parcel. Now, I know a lot of you have played a very active role in the P3 development proposal and disposition process. We appreciate all the work that has been done. It's been a valuable part of this process in identifying the needs and the planning priorities for the entire neighborhood, especially the Nubian Square and the Ruggles station area. I also want to stress that no other planning decision has been made beyond letting the designation expire and allowing P3 to be considered in this community process for the Madison Park feasibility study. Now, this upcoming Madison Park feasibility study is going to include significant public engagement. We have members of the Public Facilities Department here tonight to talk about the work that we've done so far and the anticipated work ahead of us. And I'm sure that we will be able to engage all of you throughout that process that we anticipate will take the next 2 years to complete. Now, the benefit of including P3 in the conversation about this Madison Park reconstruction is really significant. It's possible that it can save the city around $100 million to have P3 available for considering to have the P3 available in consideration for the school. Instead of spending money on a temporary swing building or alternate solutions for building replacement for the sports field, we have the potential to build a brand new Madison Park on P3 while the students are actually continuing their studies in the existing building and have continuous use of the sports field throughout the entire study and construction period. Now, I want to acknowledge that HYM and My City at Peace have put significant time and effort into developing their concept for P3 and advancing it diligently over the last several years. Our aspirations for affordable housing, economic development continue to be aligned with this team. And I have no doubt that the work that they've put in, the dedication that they've spent in working on this project will put them in a good position to continue this work once the feasibility study for the Madison Park is completed, and that they will be well positioned to participate in a redevelopment of what remnant parcel might be available at the end of the feasibility study. Now, I think that ends my brief introduction. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Tomasevich from our staff to talk more about the details of the P3 process, as well as, I think, following her, other members of the city staff that can give you more context of the work that we've done on the Madison Park reconstruction process. So turning it over to you, Rebecca, and I will be here throughout the meeting and taking questions at the end. So thank you again. Nice to see you all, and I look forward to your questions at the end of towards the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Shen. And we're actually going to have Trish Kaffer-Key from our operations department present a little bit more on the Madison Park process, and then I will provide a little bit more of the P3 context as well. So Miranda, if you could advance to the next slide.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. For anyone that I haven't met before, my name is Trish Kafferkey. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations for the City of Boston. So the reason that I'm here today is because the Operations Cabinet has the Public Facilities Department within it, and the Public Facilities Department is responsible for all of the major capital projects for the city, and that includes renovations and new construction for Boston Public School buildings. So I know many of you are very familiar with Madison Park. Many of you, are from this exact area, and I won't dig too deeply into what the school itself is, but I do want to give you an overview of the work that we've been doing for the last couple of years on it. So next slide. So Madison Park, the school, is on Malcolm X Boulevard, and it is the only technical vocational high school in Boston. It has 20 career and technical education programs called CTEs. I'll refer to them occasionally. And those programs cover the trades, communications, tech, human services, healthcare, and we are seriously looking at expanding those program offerings through this capital project. Currently, the school is only grades 9 through 12, and it serves about 1,000 students. Although enrollment has been up and down, and we're looking to get enrollment numbers better. And lastly, something that makes this school really special is the co-op program, which allows students to earn academic credit, gain work experience, and then also earn pay while they attend and get academic credit during their junior and senior years. So next slide goes over some of our key goals, one of which is honoring the history of advocacy around the site, because it's really the community that has fought so hard for this project and to get us here today, including the Friends of Madison Park and many, many others. This is about a massive historic investment that Mayor Wu has committed to and doubled down on through the MSBA application process. This is expected to be likely the most expensive school project in the history of Massachusetts, let alone Boston. And that's partly a function of the vocational nature of the school. So per every student, you have to basically quadruple the amount of size of the building. It's just a very unique kind of school building. We're looking at modernizing the learning spaces and really linking the academic and the vocational spaces together, bringing new modern CTE workshops that not only students but also community members can access, expanding the enrollment potential for the school, and then strengthening partnerships and really that co-op program so that our students have opportunities to get into good paying jobs when they graduate from high school directly. Next slide. So we've been working on this project for a number of years. This is not new. You have definitely probably heard about it before. It started in 2022 with a visioning and feasibility study. That study then included a labor economist study to look at what programs should we add, what programs should be improved or changed to make sure that we're giving our students good opportunities in the future, and not putting them into careers that, sound cool but are not going to be productive. That economy study followed with beginning of our design, cost estimating, and swing space strategy analysis. So that was 2024 through the beginning of 2025. The feasibility study from a year or two prior had made the recommendation for a massive renovation of Building 7, which is the main building on the Madison Park campus where the school is located. Because of that renovation recommendation, it necessitates swing space that we'll talk about more in a minute, where we have to find a place for the students to be while we do construction. That becomes extremely complicated when you're not just looking for a school building, but also for a wood shop and a cosmetology lab and a dental hygienist CTE space. So we began trying to understand what that meant. At this point in the process, in the feasibility study, we had over 19 different kinds of community meetings, workshops, things like that, with either members of the school, students, members of the community. I can definitely give a larger overview of that community process if it is helpful. However, through the design and cost estimating stage from 2024 to 2025, what we came to the conclusion was that the project was just too expensive for the city to do by itself. And so we decided that the best course of action with Mayor Wu's leadership was to apply to the MSBA, or the Massachusetts School Board Authority Core Program. The MSBA can fund up 30 to 40% of a project's total cost. It depends on a lot of factors, but we were very lucky in December of this year to be invited into that core program, which is the first step towards us actually realizing the Madison Park new build dream. So in terms of next steps from getting invited into the Madison Park core program, the first thing that will start this fiscal year is that we will start a 270-day eligibility period that the MSBA requires. The MSBA has very, very specific steps, which is excellent. It means that we have milestones that we will hit on their timeline. So that first 270-day period will pass. We will provide them everything that they ask for. And then depending on how that goes, the next steps basically follow as soon as we get different approvals. So the next step is that in summer of 2027, we'll bring on a new consultant team, an OPM, Owner's Project Manager, and a designer. That designer will lead us through an MSBA required feasibility study. We already know that the feasibility study results from our first recommended renovation, and we already know that that is not a very viable path forward. So this is a great opportunity for us to look at basically other alternatives such as new construction. So after that, once we get into that feasibility study, that is when we will really hit the ground running with an updated community process and analysis of different design scenarios, but also different location scenarios for the school. And all of that will be vetted through a thorough community process, and the MSBA is very specific about how they expect that to occur. Following that feasibility study, it will have a recommendation for a preferred scenario. We would enter design, and then finally we would enter construction, expecting around 2030. Next slide. So I mentioned the feasibility study, and it recommended renovation. So what you see on the screen is a satellite image showing where the Madison Park and O'Brien campus is in relation to P3. You also see a renovation scenario where Building 7, which is the largest building on Madison Park's campus, is shown in blue. That's the existing footprint, and then with orange on it, where there is proposed basically renovation of the existing footprint. That renovation scenario was found to be extremely difficult and required essentially a scatter site school where we would look for private partners, and we found many in the trades, in other private industry, to host Madison Park CTE classes, such as, working with the Carpenters Union or other folks like that, and then also have academic space move to the Timilty School across the street. What we found through looking at this was that it required essentially between a 15 to 18 scatter site school approach, where we had to be able to staff a nurse, do food delivery, make sure that security was working, make sure that we had query checks with everyone who was entering the premises. The operational and logistical challenges were immense. In addition to that, the Timilty School was found to only be large enough to house about 70% of the academic program. And some of the CTE programs, we were actually not able to find a private partner who could accommodate our needs, such as those query checks, or not affect their revenue producing operations in order to make space for the students. So that left us in a precarious position. And so we also, with the strong recommendation from students and faculty and parents, made the decision to also start to re-examine a new construction scenario. So that's what you see on the right side of the screen, where we would basically construct a new Madison Park where the existing football field and baseball diamond are against Ruggles Street. And that way we would not have to take Madison Park offline, and students could continue to learn in their existing environment while we do the new construction. This is extremely disruptive. It would require taking the fields offline for around 3 to 4 years and then reconstructing both fields in slightly different locations on the site. It would affect all of the other schools that use those fields, and it would require the demolition of Building 7 and the re-engagement center are housed in order to reconstruct a football field. So they were both found to be not ideal solutions, which is why we were looking for alternative sites, and P3 was named as something that we should at least be looking at through this new MSBA study. And next slide. So where we were when we ended the feasibility study previously, and that design and cost estimating, was that either option, the new build on the fields or the reconstruction, put us somewhere between $680 and $720 million, in addition to the operating costs of those swing space challenges, like busing students all around the city, even to some locations outside the city. This is massively higher than what we had budgeted for. And the city was not willing to sacrifice core elements of the program, of the vision, CTE programs that could get our students into great careers. We weren't willing to sacrifice those things to bring the cost down. And so the MSBA partnership and the application process was determined to be the best path forward. So again, the invitation was extended to us in December 2025, so extremely recently. No moves were made until we did achieve that invitation. And on the right-hand side of the screen, what you can see are the very clear steps that the MSBA lays out for all projects that go through their core process. The eligibility period, the project team selection, feasibility, schematic design, the budgeting and funding agreements, the full design, bidding, construction, and project closeout. So I'm just going to pause there and turn it over to my planning colleagues to talk more about P3 itself.
Thanks, Trish. If we could advance to the next slide after this. So I will just be running through a brief background of P3 and the disposition process itself that led to the designation that we've been discussing tonight. So parcel P3, I think a lot of folks on this call are familiar with the site, but it is around 330,000 square feet, located right along the south side of Tremont Street, adjacent to Ruggles Street and the MTA Ruggles Station. This site itself is very large. It does have some challenges and present some challenges, which we identified as part of the RFP process. So you can see in the bottom image there, the kind of blue line that's east-west, that represents a major sewer line that runs through the site that does, and the north-south is a paper street that exists there that does sort of break out the site into 4 quadrants in terms of the usability and desirability of where development needs to be placed. So that is a constraint that we put as part of the original RFP process. Additionally, our team undertook some initial remediation work in 2021 to address some of those urgent soil contamination on site, but we do acknowledge that there is some additional contamination on site that we anticipate would need to be addressed as part of a redevelopment process. So those were all considered as we put out the site for redevelopment. If you go to the next slide, so P3 has a very long history and timeline, and I tried to consolidate it as best as I could for this slide. So prior to this most recent RFP attempt for redevelopment, the site was designated for development from 2007 to 2019. That was an extensive process, and ultimately the designation did expire in 2019. And this also coincided with the adoption of Plan Nubian, which was a years-long process to re-envision how, and obviously as part of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan, the public parcels could be implemented to realize some of the goals identified as part of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan and Plan Nubian itself. P3 being, a site that was identified that could contribute towards that. So from January to September of 2021, there was 10 site-specific meetings on the P3 redevelopment, hosted in a variety of different arenas to be able to solicit feedback on what should be a part of that RFP. The RFP itself was drafted and coordinated very closely with the RSMPOC body, and the RFP was released in October of 2021. We received proposals in March of 2022. There was 2 proposals received at that time, and ultimately through the RSMPOC and the project review committee that was brought together to co-evaluate the proposals with the planning department team, we designated HYM and My City of Peace along with a variety of other partners for redevelopment of P3 in January of 2023. And then that process over the last 3 years, the project has been in the pre-development stage. There's been multiple designation extensions as part of that, with the most recent extension expiring at the end of this month. Next slide. So just a reminder, again, the request proposals were very lengthy, but to distill it into the purpose statement that guided the RFP. So the property was seeking to convey a mixed-use development to fulfill the economic development opportunities that were identified as part of the plan, and really to be able to affordable housing and equity opportunities for wealth generation and for that what got the decision ultimately previously for development and evaluation of proposals. So if we go to the next slide, the proposal that was ultimately selected in January 2020 was, again, the project that I mentioned. include My City of Peace, HYM, Madison Park Development Corporation, Dream Development, Onyx Group, Privé Parking, a lot of other members that were a part of this project. The image on the right here shows the, just basic massing for the program, but it included a significant number of housing units, 282 rental units, of which 58% were proposed to be income restricted, 184 home ownership units, of which 78% were proposed to be income restricted. Also, a very significant life science component. So those are the buildings you see there in blue. And one of the functions of this proposal that was highlighted was the idea that those life science buildings would be able to cross-subsidize and help deliver on the residential and the significant amount of affordability that was proposed as part of this project. In addition, this proposal also included space for the future site of King Boston, lab training facility managed by Lab Central Ignite, in addition to a retail component and open space as well. So that was the initial proposal that was submitted and what was ultimately selected in January of 2023. So that's a little bit of background on P3. Well, now I'll turn it back to Trish to talk a little bit about P3 in the context of Madison Park. So Miranda, if you could advance the slides. The next one. Great.
Great. So kind of to recap, where we were was two different scenarios for a renovated or a new Madison Park, neither of which were ideal. And we had just been invited into the core program, and we were trying to assess whether or not there were other locations that we should be considering and bringing to the community for input on during the feasibility study process that will be required to do by MSBA in 2027. What we believe to be true is that if we were to pursue a new build at P3 instead, and then not need to construct sports fields, not need swing space, it could save the project between $84 and $147 million, depending on what the future design recommendation of a new project is. It means that sports fields would not need to go offline for 4+ years. It means that the new Madison Park would be able to stay located on a main street in the form of Tremont instead of being located on Ruggles Street, which is a much narrower street. We did assess it, and it is able to have bus service on it for the school, but we know from, hearing from members of the community that that's not an ideal solution here. And it also would keep Madison Park very visible on Tremont as opposed to Ruggles. And then a new build on P3 would also mean that there is virtually no likelihood that we would need to demolish Building 1, where there are 2 other BPS programs that are currently housed and would need to be relocated. Next slide. Rebecca, do you want me to take this one, or?
I'm happy to jump in, and Chief Shen, feel free to add anything as well. So as I think the process is going underway in terms of looking through P3 for the opportunity to site Madison Park. Again, Trish mentioned there'll be an extensive process. What this process potentially will yield, when there's a little bit more clarity as to, the siting of this, is the opportunity to create additional areas for redevelopment once the school has been constructed. And so you can see here, there's a few different configurations that, are possible and will be studied as part of this process, and where Madison Park, the new school, could be located. And you can see some of the bubbles there. There is the option for new development to be created and for the ability to deliver on some of those goals that were identified as part of the P3 process. And so I think this is an opportunity that we anticipate to arise. And I think this is something we'll have a lot more clarity on in the 2027-2028 timeline when the MSB process has advanced. And again, I think you can see there is still, as Trish mentioned, the desire for Madison Park to be located along Tremont. But again, I think there's a lot of connection that could exist on Malcolm X, or even within the residential area on the southeasterly side of P3. So Chief Shen, I'll turn it back to you if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, thank you, Rebecca and Trish, for the presentation. I think, Norm, rather than us filling the time, it's best to turn it over to you to manage any conversation and discussion and questions and answers that you or the members of the Oversight Committee or the public would have. So I just want to emphasize that I think this particular decision that we're taking right now, which is not to extend the designation, is to make sure that the community has the most options to consider in the siting of Madison Park. I just want to emphasize that's not abandoning the aspirations that all of us have had for P3 all this time, which is that we recognize how important it is to have more affordable housing, more home ownership opportunity, as well as wealth creation through economic development and, the kinds of jobs and, that would have come with the labs. I think that for us, this is just really a pause for about a 2-year period where we would be focusing on the siting of the school. And once that feasibility study is completed, we would be focusing and working with the Oversight Committee to determine the remaining parcels that won't be used for the school, how we can actually put that out for a new RFP where we can consider once again some of the similar kind of impact private and residential uses that we know the community needs. So I hope that this course of action that we're taking is opening up more opportunities and more engagement. And we look forward to working with you and the committee, as well as members of the community, to advance this ultimate goal.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Trish. And at this point, we'll move to take questions, some comments from folks. I'm going to go in the order of our elected officials first. They'd like to say anything. So with that, Representative China Tyler.
Hi, yes, good evening, everyone. I'm more eager to hear from the community on this. I know we're going to get a lot of commentary around location and particularly around home ownership. I've been hearing a lot about that over the last couple of years as it relates to P3 and what it's going to be offering. But I want to hear more about the CTEs over time. I want to hear from the community first, but I want to hear about the CTEs because there are a lot of different innovative careers out there. And I just want to make sure that, if we stay, if we go, if we move back, forth, whatever it is, that we're making sure we're setting up our kids for success. So I'm going to pass it on to Reverend, to Councilor Culpepper.
You know I was going to go that way. Councilor Culpepper.
Good evening. Obviously, and thank you, Carlos, Chairman, and Norm, and the team. Obviously, this P3 site is a critical site, significant site in terms of the community and the way that entire area has been developed, especially when you look at what's happened around Northeastern and all the development there. Parcel 3 has just been sitting there many, many years. We've driven by that day after day after day. We also know that Madison Park, one of the things that I said over and over during the campaign was that we needed a new Madison Park, not a renovated Madison Park. So I'm happy to hear that we're talking about a new Madison Park, even though it's not where the present Madison Park is. We're at least talking about a new Madison Park. P3 is in some ways a gateway. And so I want to hear from the community. I'll be meeting with the community, we're doing listening sessions. And yeah, let's turn to the community. Let's hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Okay, if I'm missing any of our elected reps, forgive me for right now. But I will ask next if there are any members of the Oversight Committee who have any questions, comments at this point. If
Hey, Norm, I didn't know how to get into put my question on. Can I ask my question?
sure, Beleda.
So my question was, what did the labor economic studies show in terms of careers for Madison Park students? What kinds of careers were we talking?
That's a great question. So, at the risk of talking for a long time, I would love to read you the list of the current programs and then read you the list of ones that we're looking at adding first. So,
I was going to say, read me the list. Well, I'm being rude, but read me the list of the ones we're adding, and then we can go back to the ones that already are taking place at Madison. Madison is one of my favorite schools.
yep.
So I have a feel for what goes on there, but I'd like to know kind of what are you seeing in terms of new careers? And then we can go and talk about all the many careers that are at Madison Park, and there are a boatload.
Definitely. So there, as part of the feasibility study stage that the MSBA process is going, they're going to have us do an update to the labor study that we already did because it'll be several years old at that point,
Okay.
which will be a great opportunity and it'll go out to the school community all over again. But some of the programs that we were very, very seriously looking at adding to the school before we went to the MSBA and applied were an early childhood education program, thinking that it would be great if our students could have a daycare to serve the community. And there are lots of opportunities opening up in that field. It's very in demand. Robotics was being considered and is something that we're already trying to actually integrate into an existing program at Madison. We were looking at biotechnology, business technology, construction craft labor, which is a program that we would love to add soon. It'll be looked at again. We were also looking at expanding the electrical cohort because it's so popular and it's such a good paying profession. We were looking at adding a second culinary cohort, also one of the more popular programs. We were looking at veterinary science. And then we were also actually looking at an aviation pilots program, which is not a traditional Chapter 74 program, and we're still studying how it could be included in a future Madison Park school. But we're actively actually working on figuring out, we started an aviation club and we're looking at how to possibly, start one of those programs sooner. So that's the list of like the top ones that we very seriously began to study after that study.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you like the list of the existing programs?
I would like the list of the existing.
Okay, great. We have auto collision, auto technology, carpentry, electricity, facility management and building and property maintenance, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, metal fabrication and welding, plumbing, cosmetology, hospitality, culinary arts, marketing, design and visual communications, graphic communications, dental assisting, health assisting, medical assisting, programming and web development, informational support services and networking, and then a program called Exploratory, where in ninth grade, essentially every student gets to try every program.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great school.
Next, Dorothea.
Good evening, everybody. My concern is not necessarily what will happen in almost 10 years from now as far as the school is concerned. I am concerned about the people that had received designation, and the designation is going to end, and what happens to all of the efforts that they put into the RFP as it was outlined to them before they put in their bid and it was accepted. So I think that that is one of the major issues that causes me to realize that something there has to be some kind of compromise. I think that for someone to have worked on proposals, I'm sorry, I'm hearing something through my hearing aid. For someone to have worked on proposals, to have had it accepted by the community, by the city of Boston, and then all of a sudden there's a change that was not brought up to them before. They were not aware of it. And all of a sudden, they're getting this information, and it just does not sit right with me as far as the economic development of Nubian Square, because more than likely, the people that were had received the designation were people that were from our community or of our community. And it's, I'm going to be perfectly frank, it's almost like the land is being taken back a second time from people in this community. And I just have a problem with it. Perhaps if we're able to have a means where we can really get together and talk about this, and meaning the oversight committee, the community, as well as the city of Boston, the planning department, or whoever, so that there is a little bit more satisfaction instead of the taking away of opportunity again from people within our community.
Thank you,
And that's all I
Dorothea.
have to say for now.
Okay.
Amen, Dorothea.
All right. We'll hold off on any responses for just yet. Hopefully the folks in the planning departments are getting the vibes, and we'll come back. Lorraine?
Hi. So my comments are very much along the same lines as Dorothea, that the lots that were assigned to the Oversight Committee, that by and large, although a lot of housing has been approved and much of it has been built, it's the economic development part that hasn't been realized. And so when we look at P3, we're looking again at the land going toward a project that's not necessarily going to bring economic development to this community. And so I think that I agree with Dorothea that a lot more should be discussed with the community in terms of how much land is going to be available after this project goes through. And, you know, I think that people need to know a lot more.
Who?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm not on camera, or I don't think I am. Just a quick thing, and I agree with both of you that it's important that we don't take back from the community and all. I guess my thing in this though is that we have spent close to 20 years now trying to get P3 developed, and through extensions and extensions, you know, numerous developers and extensions, and we still have nothing there. And there's been talk, you know, in the committee and beyond and all that, the size of the parcel itself in some ways made things prohibitive because it just required too much from certain developers and all to do it. And I guess my thought is that, and Madison Park is near and dear to my heart as well. That, I would like to see what, how much would be taken, how much would be left, because I'd like to see that, and I guess the word, and I don't know, I think you used the word, to me, it likened to leftover parcels. I probably wouldn't use that term. Okay, it wasn't leftover. It had that connotation that what could be taken from Madison Park, there could also still be parcels that could be very well suited for whether it's housing or different development. So I guess I'm looking forward to seeing it, because frankly, 20 years of not having anything on P3 has really been sour on me.
I think many of us feel that way, sure. All right. If someone from the Oversight Committee, someone from the Oversight Committee has something else to say, we'll circle back. At this point, if I have the correct people in a row, Armani.
Hey, you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Armani White here, Executive Director at Reclaim Roxbury, and good to see a lot of familiar faces. Our organization was essentially started in 2015 as a response to the Feldco development and their multi-year extensions of a project that we felt didn't do enough towards advancing the economic development of Nubian Square. And so we're really excited to see the P3 parcel move forward with the project selected by community with strong community standards. So, hearing this news, it's definitely a shock, I think, to people who have put time and effort into making sure this comes out in the shape that community want to see it. And I think that all the comments that have been said, I kind of share the same sentiment. It's like, on the one hand, everyone wants to see Madison Park win. On the other hand, we also want to see the community, development that we selected also win. And so I think that I'm curious to know, yeah, like the timeline or the speed of which this decision is being decided. Like, it feels to me like there's a board vote happening. We're trying to, have decided on it very quickly. And does it need to be that in order to get through the feasibility, or is there a time that we could head to learn more? But that being said, I think there's so many questions, and lots of opportunity potentially. Like, how many more units could be built at Madison Park at the school if that school wasn't there? Is it the same amount that would have been at P3? And so, is there a way to like get that housing mixed use development at the old site, like there might have been at the rather at Madison's old site rather than the existing P3 development site? Um, and more information about that, I think would. I'm not one of the developers on that team, but I imagine I'd want to know kind of what the city's seeing as a potential like next step. And I know you've mentioned that there's opportunity for those same people to be a part of this. And so I think the development here, it'd be nice to know that the same standards community members fought for that are, diversity, equity, inclusion on this land that still moves forward with the Madison one. Like there should be black and brown contractors used for the construction and, assuming that moves forward, right, with this news that we're just hearing now. So yeah, I'm kind of like, I have lots of questions all over the place, but, as someone who's, been working on this for the better half of like 11 years and is also a P3 PRC member who, went through the process of, painstakingly reading through all the different proposals. Yeah, want to see this parcel succeed, and definitely it's interesting to see how we had the campus high urban renewal back in the day that led to in part this development being available, and now we're kind of trying to do a high development, but maybe the right way. So I don't know, just thinking, holding all the complexity of it together, but we'll say that, yeah, I think more discussion would be good and I think we need to hear a clarity on the timeline and there needs to be a strong commitment to those, like to the people in the community and the people who are selected to make sure that we can do something, to make sure that we have economic development through this too. So just want to throw that in the mix.
Yeah, thanks, Amani.
So, Norm, do you want us to answer some of the questions specifically around the timeline, or do you want us to wait?
Sure. No, we can do that now. Sure.
So, Trish, do you mind just walking through once again, and maybe we can go back to the slide of sort of the immediate sort of sequence of the Madison Park feasibility study, and then put it into the context where we could, at at the point where the feasibility study would be complete, we could be starting a new disposition process and re-engaging in the sort of the goals that we have set up for ourselves for this disposition. Now, recognizing that in that same time frame, that our aspirations may also shift, especially with a brand new Madison Park Vocational School about to be delivered. We may have different aspirations for the site, but I see the venue of all of that discussion about what kind of development objectives we would have for reconfigured new, development site, that we would be working with the oversight committee to do all of that work. Now, we recognize that the current team, as well as the current, the PRC, as well as the oversight committee, has spent a lot of energy working to get this current proposal as far as it's gone. And I recognize that, this opportunity with respect to state funding for the Madison Park is a new dynamic. But I think that given the current market conditions and the progress that we've made up until now, that the school is the one that, in the near next 2 years, is the one that is the project that can move forward. So I just want to, that's some editorial comment for me. And maybe Trish, do you mind just walking through the feasibility study? So
Yeah.
just to be clear that this is if you want to call it a diversion and pause from the economic development and housing agenda,
Yep.
and prioritizing the school for the next, period that Trish will walk you through once again.
Right.
Thank you.
Miranda, can you go back to the timeline slide? It was earlier in the deck. When I presented it, I don't think that, I think it's helpful to revisit it. Can you go back? No.
I can. Give me 1 second. It won't let me hit the back arrow.
Here it is.
If there's something on top of it that I can't hit. Okay.
Maybe stop sharing and then reshare.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, great. Well, she does that. The gist is that beginning this summer, we will start our 270-day eligibility period. That will end next March. We will then begin the process as long as we get the right approvals. The city council will have to vote. Great. The city council will have to vote. Other votes will need to be taken to move the project forward. But generally, basically we'll start hiring the consultant team beginning in summer of 2027. And then once that consultant team is on board, we'll start the feasibility study period. So that feasibility study period is expected to take around 1 year. And it would end in 2028. And at some point during that study period, that's when we would identify the ideal site for the school. It has very specific desires, such as a retail frontage, because, imagine that the culinary shop actually also has a bakery that community members could walk into that wants to be on a street. Imagine that there's a veterinary clinic and you can bring your animals in to get checked that wants to be on a street, but also there are some back of house needs. So like the site would need to be studied through that feasibility period. Miranda, are you able to go to the slide?
I am. What slide was it again, Trish?
It's just, I don't have access to your deck, so I don't know what number slide it was, but it's in the first batch about the Madison Park project.
Okay. Yep.
Yep, right there.
Oh,
Nope.
Great.
Nope.
One
One past
forward.
it.
Okay.
Nope. Okay, here we are. So this is generally the outline. So it's really around the time when we would be hitting like fast forward on real design. Let's figure out exactly what this looks like in 2028. That's when it would be likely that the planning department could be revisiting an RFP.
Hey, Trish, can you also talk about the state's requirement for community participation in the feasibility study? Because I think what you just raised, the question about sort of the frontage that an ideal Madison Park school would have, that would have some retail and outward-facing activity. I think um, making sure that the idea of commercial development in the remaining parcels or reconfigured parcels, I think if we can join the thinking of that at the same time, that would be great because I think so. Trish, what is the state's requirement for community participation?
It's quite rigorous. It has very specific times when you need to have certain kinds of meetings, but it also sets out groups that you need to reach the city and then broader communities. So during our own community engagement process, we had 7 community meetings during our feasibility study. That was not even driven by the MSBA. So we would expect it to be as rigorous. And those are broader community meetings. In total, we had 19 visioning sessions, workshops, things like that in the first session, the first feasibility study.
I would suggest that, and we are certainly on the city side, very much open in this new feasibility study to make sure that the oversight committee, with the specific mission and responsibility of ensuring, the economic development objectives of the remaining public parcels be integrated in the thinking about the school itself. Because now that rebuilding Madison Park is part of this larger P3 objective, that making sure that the new economic development sites, together with the Madison Park, are working hand in hand. So I don't think, Trish, that the previous study that you engaged in and the community engagement included the oversight committee. But would it be possible to integrate and include the oversight committee in the feasibility study phase coming next for Madison Park?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be great to have the oversight committee be strong participants in that process, and we can send out, information reminders, things like that to make sure that you're aware of when those community meetings are held. And also happy to come back to the oversight committee to give updates during the process if that's useful.
Yes, that would be for sure. Okay, going back to people who have questions.
Thank you.
Tito?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank everyone who spoke. My name is Tito Jackson, former Boston City Councilor. Also, Reclaim Roxbury came out of my office when I was there, looking at the 351 parcels with Caesar McDowell and others. So I just want to note there is a false choice that is being made right now, and I have to call it out. This does not have to be a or. When we look at what the precedent is, there is a building that is actually sitting on parcel 10 that was built while the designation happened, and that is Whittier Street. And Whittier Street was part of parcel 10. And a portion of that was actually peeled off, so Whittier Street could actually be built. I am upset that the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan and the PRC had not been consulted prior. When these are the folks who actually made the recommendation to ensure that there was a Black developer here that actually was going to be a real equity partner, half on $1 billion project. And now we are instead pitting the school versus economic development, which is wholly unfair. I think it is unacceptable to pretend that transportation is an issue when the Boston Public Schools doesn't even put 7th and 8th graders on buses currently. and that these are high school students. And for me, I personally believe I would love to have Madison Park students at the Carpenters on a daily basis, so they can become a carpenter with the best among us in training. And I find it odd that this information would come in December 2025, and here we are in the second week of the year. Actually, it turns out Martin Luther King's birthday is going to be celebrated on Monday, and we are talking about de-designating a Black developer who is from the community. At the same time that there was a developer there prior who wasn't from the community, who had 12 years of designation. And if I'm not wrong, over 50 some odd extensions relative to that, at least while I was there. So as Dorothea spoke earlier, I really think about that this should not be happening. This does not have to happen. The BRA, the planning, y'all have changed some stuff since I've been there. You have discretion to extend a designation for 6 months, for 3 months, for a year, and the like. And so I think it's unacceptable to say we have 270 days and then you guys are going to pull this out in 2 days because you quote unquote have to. That's not okay. And when I hear Kairos, when I hear you talking about the community being included, the community was included. They designated this site to this team, and now the community is not being included because you're actually making a pronouncement right now. You're telling people what you're going to do, not asking them what we should do. That's not how we rock here in Roxbury. That's what the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee has been about. And the reason why there's sewer lines under those buildings is because it was a neighborhood. It was a neighborhood that was actually torn down and wealth was taken away from our community. And it's unacceptable to say we're going to wait till 2030 for anything that actually happened on that site, and we'll kind of determine what happens in the future. I'm in the private sector now. That's not how dollars are allocated. What should and can happen is that there should be an extension. We should have a conversation with the developers and actually determine how this can be a win-win rather than an or in this situation. This is not the reason why this organization was put forward, is so that we can actually make determinations for ourselves and have self-determination. So this is the false choice that's being presented to this community. There needs to be more engagement, and you need to tap your brakes right now and stop this from going off of the hill. We're not going to allow several hundred millions of dollars of wealth to be taken away from the adults in the community, and we're going to say it's because we're going to look out for the students. There is a win-win, and as goes those parents, also will go those students. We can actually do this together rather than making this false narrative. And so I will also just note, in terms of swing space, the Boston Public Schools has 126 actual buildings. So when it comes down to it, there is an opportunity to actually plan this out. And I believe that there should be a motion for an extension of the designation, a further conversation in the community, how this designation can stay and potentially reapportion the site. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And if anyone wants some history, I gained several pounds, as many gray hairs watching this process not happen. And now we have some folks who actually are in the position to make it happen. I believe that we need to allow them to do that. I do need to disclose that I was the chair of the board of Embrace Boston, and I also was the chair of the board of the Black Men's Commission, and I used to be an ex-official member of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Peter. Along this, then we'll keep moving along for now. Rodney?
Thanks, Norm, for taking my question. So we all know that land is power, and let's see, we've designated a Black developer. Now we're taking it back because we think we have a better idea. This is fundamentally taking agency away from the Black community, and frankly, it's just racist. This is I'm just horrified that we would be suggesting this. I mean, and you made it the point in your slide that it was about economic development. So it's not just land, it's economic power as well. And to bereft that of the community is good old Boston racist politics. And we should not be in that business. And then we have the gall to ask, gee, we don't have enough money, and seek that money from the state when we're given $100 million plus to a soccer interest in White Stadium, and we've taken that land as well. Listen, folks, we need to. Tito said we need to tap the brakes. We need to do more than that. We need to slam on the brakes.
Thanks, brother. And Tia?
Hi, thank you for the presentation, the update today. My name is Intia Ambrogi-Saza. I'm with MPDC, Madison Park Development Corporation. So for those who aren't familiar with us, I do just want to clarify that this is a local community development corporation that is separate and totally apart from the high school. It just happens to share the same historic name. I've only been with Madison Park for 4 years, a little over 4 years, but Madison Park Development Corporation as an organization is in its 60th year and was founded in opposition to the Boston Redevelopment Authority at the time's campus plan, the same plan that Armani alluded to earlier. And our organization has successfully built senior family affordable housing, the DeWitt Community Center, and all kinds of things on the land that we were able to kind of reclaim from the BRA throughout that history. MPDC has been a member of the larger team. We were not named as one of the designated parties, which are My City at Peace and HYM, but we were sort of junior partners brought in and hoping to assist with the development of the affordable rental housing component. So mostly I wanted to come here today. This news kind of came as a surprise to me, not exactly within the last hour, but not that far off either. And so I mostly wanted to hear the community reaction and make sure that MPDC is kind of present and a partner in whatever goals kind of come forth from this group and folks here, and I'll put my email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me if I can sort of help clarify our role in it in any way. I think I just wanted to voice that we're disappointed to lose the opportunity, both for the larger economic development goals, but obviously especially for the affordable housing component that our organization has really focused on, and that certainly my role focuses on within the organization. So importance of those goals, and appreciate everyone taking the time to chime in. Thanks.
Thank you, Tia. Lavette?
Hi, sorry, I'm in another state right now. So I just wanted to ask a question. So I keep hearing the theme that the developers are Black, and I know a lot of them were on the team are Black, but the main developer isn't, right? And he's not from the community. Is he not? Somebody can clarify who the main developer is, and where is the investment coming from? Where is the money coming from for that development team to build or to develop? Is it coming from out of the United States? Is it coming from out of the country, and where? That's the question I have.
I'm happy to jump in and just provide. So as part of the RFP process, the development entity was a joint venture, the development entity itself between HYM and My City at Peace. At this present time, the project was still in the pre-development phase. And so in terms of financing and funding for the project, that had not been assembled. So again, I think there is the development entity, which is the two teams I mentioned, with a lot of community partners, which I had mentioned also previously in my slides, but then the actual financing itself was still to be determined. And that was a component of the project that had not yet advanced.
So the main developer was O'Brien, is that correct? And he's not from the community, he's not Black.
HYM, yes, Tom O'Brien is a part of HYM, which was one of the developers, My City at Peace being the other, which is led by Reverend Jeffrey Brown.
Thank you.
Can I also jump in here? I think that's a relevant question because in the last few years, since the designation, we've been working with this team, and one of the things that we were, uh, working together with is to really understand the feasibility of the project. And obviously, there was COVID. I think the designation was what happened just post-COVID. And as you know, the market condition and the ability to actually assemble the capital that's necessary to advance this really ambitious project has been challenging. And so when we're considering at this particular stage, I take the point from Tito, who mentioned that we're snatching back this opportunity that was won by this set of developers. But I think that our current assessment on where the market is and the kind of uncertainty in the economy, the institutions, which is the core part of our economy, and jobs in the life sciences and institutions is very much under threat. And it's with that broader context in mind that we are prioritizing the school, which has a very sort of explicit support coming from the state. In my estimation, based on my experience in the city and seeing the cycles of the economy, that it's actually prudent for us to take a time out to do the school and advance that project while the economy at the same time is recovering. So that I worry about, I think this false choice that Tito outlined, I'm not sure I agree with, because I think in this that doesn't take into account the kind of economic condition that we're in and the need that we have, a very urgent and present need that for advancing the educational agenda that I think Madison Park reconstruction would advance in the next 2 years, which I think is critical. So anyway, I apologize for interrupting here.
No, that's fine, Carlos. Believe me. Ricardo.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Ricardo Lewis, Roxbury resident, board member of United Neighbors Lower Roxbury, and also CEO and founder of Privé Parking, which is one of the partners that was involved with this particular development, the P3 project. This news was surprising, as you guys all can tell, just hearing about it now. But most importantly, it's heartbreaking. And I just kind of wanted to give you a perspective on our position and the role we played within this development. We're in the parking industry, and this development is what we called a game changer a development. It was the first time ever that we would have been the parking and transportation consultant, and we were involved with the underground parking garage that was being proposed with this project. It was 500 spaces, and not only were we the consultant, we were also going to be named the operator once the garage was operational. And not only were we going to be named the operator, we were also going to have equity stake in that garage. And having equity stake is a game changer because typically in my business, there has never been someone Black, local, that has equity stake in any public garage in the city of Boston. So hearing this news, and there's many other partners. There's the Onyx Groups. The Onyx Group was going to be responsible for a massive number of commercial space that they would be able to broker and make deals. And that would have been game changing for them. And they would have used that as an example on scaling and getting into different markets regarding life science and many other markets. Dream Collaborative, they were the leading architects on this development. And this was another example that they were going to use to go into bigger markets as well. We have Embrace Boston, who had their actually headquarters that was going to be on this site, their own place that they can call home. And to hear about this is really, like I said, surprising. And most importantly, it's heartbreaking because once again, it feels like we are just going backwards. And every time we get a little inch or an opportunity where we have equity in place and we can really take it to the next level and all our local businesses can become leaders in our industries, things like this always happen. It's the same story over and over and over again. And we felt like we put a strong team together with community partners to really make a difference right in our neighborhood in Roxbury. This wasn't just another development. This was a representation. It's something that we can point at and say, look, people in our neighborhood that look like us did it. And that's not the chance. So what I would like to ask and see if you guys are open to, is there real opportunity where the city of Boston can come back and propose an opportunity to work with us? Not just kick us to the side, but work with us. Or maybe we're the ones to develop the schools, but still make some changes to our current proposal and keep this thing going. There's tremendous impact in this development. And that's something that I just want to put on the table.
Enough, sure. There's been a question asked in the chat that I want to go to. And the question is, what will happen to the John D. O'Brien? And Trish, I believe you're going to answer that.
I did volunteer, yes. So the O'Brien was not part of the MSBA application. We have made consistent efforts to make sure that the Madison Park project is as undisruptive to the O'Brien as possible, but this current proposal related to P3 does not touch the O'Brien, and in fact, we think it's better for the O'Brien because it does not take the sports fields offline for any years, which would affect O'Brien. But there is not currently a different proposal for the O'Brien.
To stay with that for the moment, then Nefertiti, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much for calling on me. I've been listening and I thank you so much. I got my son in the background. The reason I asked, I'm a teacher at the O'Brien, and one of the concerns I have is that we are very much so a large. Sorry about that. We're very much a big part of this community, and I feel like we're being left out. They shut it down, it was shut down, and when we did not go to West Roxbury, and now it's like, what's happening? I'm happy that Madison Park is getting some traction, but I think you guys really should consider 2 schools on that site.
Okay. Devin?
Good evening, all. Devin Morris, co-founder and executive director of the Teachers Lounge and vice chair of the Commission on Black Men and Boys. I would like to note, as others have cited issues with the process, I'm going to skip over that for a moment and just cite the obvious, which is that you all have a significant PR problem, and I highly encourage you to rectify it. If I look at this timeline, the glaring issue that has come up multiple times is the fact that Embrace Boston was a part of a process, and the weekend or the week of MLK weekend is when they are consumers of, like other partners in this, consumers of the information as opposed to partners in the process is problematic. There's a piece which is that at some point, and Kairos, I think your point is that there was an assessment that was made about feasibility and about economic development, and that decision was not made last week. That decision had to have been made at some point prior to, and there was not involvement of the folks who had been on this journey for quite some time up until this point. That's the thing that is problematic about your process, but even more problematic about the communication of. And so I would highly recommend, in addition to some necessary private conversations and involvement of partners along this journey, if folks were truly partners, there's a second piece of how you are communicating this that is that communicates transparency. And right now, the timeline doesn't quite accurately communicate sort of how you came to this process, how you came to this decision in this moment or proposal, and it lacks the participation of those who have put as many have noted, the blood, sweat, and tears to even get to this point, and are more so consumers with the general public, which I just think is not the right way to handle this process. So hopeful for what can be in this timeline. And I think there have been some notable proposals made in the chat and via comment.
Okay, I'll take a couple, one or two more. Jonathan?
Yes. So one thing that I just wanted to jump in and say is that going off of what Tito Jackson was just saying, looking at this project timeline, it looks like the community was making a designation decision about this project in 2020 to 2023. And in parallel, the city was making planning decisions about Madison Park. And then when there came to be some sort of conflict, the city planning just decided that the community input doesn't matter, that we're just proclaiming today that the developer loses their designation and this whole process starts over, which is frustrating to say the least. And I guess I was wondering, has the developer even been consulted to find some sort of compromise? Because I understand that P3 was it's a large parcel and it's been difficult to develop in the past. But has the developer even been consulted to potentially downsize their plans or to find some variation of their original proposal so that both goals can be accomplished? Or are we just pushing them aside and telling them to start over and disregarding their investment up until this point?
Norm, can I respond to the first part, the first question about the timeline?
Yes, you may, Trish.
So I think your point about the fact that these two things were happening at the same time previously is a really good one. And the reason that it happened this way is because in 2022 to 2023, when you were going through your RFP process, our study was telling us that we should renovate the existing school. It wasn't until 2024 to 2025 that we spent 9 months understanding how impossible a school spread across 18 sites was going to be, and all of the costs, all of the logistics, everything associated with that. We then didn't do anything. We applied to the MSBA process and we studied the new construction on the back of the field. It wasn't until this past December, less than a month ago, or about exactly a month ago, that we found out that we were invited into the MSBA core program and that we would get another crack at a feasibility study and that would ask us to look at sites. So that's why we're revisiting it at this particular juncture. But if we knew in 2022 and 2023 what we know now, I think that there is a very real chance that the Public Facilities Department would have gone to planning and said, we think you need to pause. But we thought that we could do a swing space strategy, and that's proven not to be the case.
Also, Trish, I think that the initial study for after you determined that renovation was not feasible, that the first new construction was respecting the boundaries of P3 and actually on the playing fields, and with the desire to actually allow P3 to go forward as planned.
Yes,
So
and that will still be
critical.
studied. That will still be studied as part of the feasibility study that the MSBA process has us do. They will still look at that as an option. What we found is that it does add around $100 million to the project because of the reconstruction, the demolition, all of that. That's roughly equivalent to the cost of 3 new public libraries, just to try to ballpark it.
Okay, and the second part of my question was, have we made any effort so that these two proposals can play nice together, or are we just making this an either or proposition?
So I can respond to that. I would say that I think the comment, Jonathan, you're making, and also the previous speaker was, we have been in constant communication with the development team. So Rebecca can attest to the fact that we have regular meetings with their team. So much of what we're talking about is not, sprung on the team, overnight. there has been lots of discussion. They've been aware of some of the studies that we've been doing. We have also been working very hard with them to try to advance their project. Ever since I've returned about a little over a year ago. So to the extent that a lot of this was happening at the staff level and with the project team, as soon as we received the invitation from the state formally in December, I reached out to Norm to actually inform him and said, look, I'd like to have an opportunity to actually come to the Oversight Committee to inform the larger public who don't have the benefit of our weekly conversations with the team about where, the choices that we are actually confronting. So I would say that, yes, there is a public relations kind of problem, but I hope that, our own constant communication with the development team, that kind of interaction that we've had has been very forthright and open. I think that in this particular case, because the size of the site and the physical needs of a Madison Park is so extensive that the project as currently conceived by the development team is not compatible with the school. Now, can housing in the school be accommodated on the current configuration of P3? Possibly, but and likely, but the problem with it is that we don't know what the actual configuration is, the most preferred configuration for the Madison Park, and that we want the most flexibility and optionality working with the community in advancing the plan that works best for the school. And look, if there was actual capital immediately available or with real any prospect of occurring in the next 18 to 24 months, we would not be doing this. But I think that it's not a news to anybody that we are at a dramatic downturn of development of all kinds throughout the city. It's affecting all of the neighborhoods of the city. And Roxbury is not immune to that economic condition. So I want to say that, if you isolate this as just, we are targeting this particular parcel, I think the facts will show that that's not the case here. And we have been, this has been, when I arrived, one of the priority projects that we wanted to advance. And we have been, I believe, with a lot of sincerity with this current team to make sure that we were turning over stones of trying to advance certain phases of this project, but we have not had any success. So, it's disappointing, not only for the development team, but for us. And under these conditions, we're looking at the project that can advance in the next 24 months, and that's the school. So, as I said, I'm committed to making sure that I can work with, in my capacity and the planning department and this administration to continue to work diligently with the oversight committee and the community to try to advance not just the school, but also the affordable housing, the commercial development that will bring job and bring wealth to the community. But given that the current economic conditions, that this is the time horizon to take on a more realistic view of where the economy is, that the time horizon necessarily is stretching out beyond what we had hoped to be, the now to something in the 5 to 10 year range.
Okay, folks. I think we've gotten most of the questions answered.
Could I make a comment, please?
Yes.
I have had my hand raised for quite a while, and I hear both sides. I hear the city side. I hear some of the developer. I heard from one developer, I believe, that says that he has already invested um, in fact, and his the possibilities for him and his business as well as the community are being pulled from under him. I had said before that the BRA took a lot of that land years ago, and I feel that it is a continuation of that same sense of loss for the people in the Madison Park, Roxbury, Nubian Square area. I firmly believe that what we need is if I'm on the oversight committee and I have no idea what the developers are proposing, what those conversations have been, what do they disagree with, what can they accept, what is the city willing to compromise on so that people do not have a sense of being robbed again. I think that one of the things that needs to happen is we need in-person meetings where the developers, the city, and the community can come together and hear, listen, learn, and try to move forward. That's what I have to say for now.
With that, somehow we'll get it together as best we can. Obviously, from the oversight committee standpoint, from the community, and obviously the city. This is basically this is a fairly recent development. It's not like it just happened, 4 years ago. We didn't know about it. We'll look to see what we can carry forward with the developers, and hopefully go from there. And
can I just say,
maybe, I'm sorry, Karis, maybe we'll look at in-person meetings. We'll see.
No, may I would just say this. It's a coincidence that the designation happened. We've been doing a series of 6 months designation, and it happens that the designation is lapsing at the end of January. So, we had a choice to make, which is that given what we know and the conversations that we've been having, we could, in fact, have gone and sort of said, hey, let's extend this designation, even though we know what we know today. I mean, if the designation would continue until, the end of June, we would be having this conversation at the same time now and just telling you that we'll let the designation expire at the end of June. I think that, I thought I made the recommendation to actually be, in good faith and transparency to share this news, with the community, basically at the first opportunity since we were formally, made aware of the fact that we were invited into the state feasibility study. And I think that, I think that that's a real, change from before when we had information that we didn't share. So I recognize that many of you are unhappy and disappointed about the news, but I feel like, this was, as I said, I called Norm to say, as soon as I knew in, the third week of December, and said, no, Norm, I know the holidays are coming up, and I want to make sure that we share this news with the community as soon as possible. And I appreciate Norm you and the Oversight Committee hosting us at this time. And I want to say that, this is a sort of unfortunate confluence of timing in terms of, the PR implications. But I think that in terms of sharing, where we are, what the considerations are, I think we're being, hopefully, some of you would appreciate that this is being transparent rather than, the opposite. So I appreciate everyone's time tonight, giving us an opportunity to share the information that we have. We look forward to continuing working with all of you. And I know that, look, I mean, as I said, I've been involved in the Oversight Committee's work from the very beginning in 2004 and also the years leading up to it. And I would say that while this is a disappointment and this downturn of the economy is a disappointment to all of us, that we have accomplished a lot. I think that there's been, I think that Parcel 8 is to break ground in the next few weeks. Crews on the former site of the police station will also break ground. So amidst all of the disappointment here with P3, there are also bright spots, and I'm hoping that we will be able to be together in person to celebrate some of these successes, and hope that you will keep the faith and continue working with us. So thank you.
Welcome, Carlos. Last question to comment to Valeda. Valeda, you're on mute.
There was another request for comment in the chat also.
Got it. I just want to say thank you to everybody for participating. What I heard was the current designation expires at the end of the month. I remember being on the P3 piece when we were talking to Felco, and we kept extending and extending and extending, even though it didn't look like there was any financing there. So I just also want to, be mindful of the fact that financing is really important, and we're in the pre-development stage with respect to P3. So I just want to just say that, and thank you everybody, and Kairos, thank you for coming to us and bringing your team. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would it be possible to ask one quick question?
There was another request for a comment in the chat.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
And Mari wanted to say something real quick.
Okay, Mari. Yeah. Well, I'm basically on Mari. I'm on Mari. Same thing. There you go, Mari.
Okay. Time out. Go ahead, Amari.
Amari can go if he had one. I already went earlier, but I can. Mine is quick after Amari's.
I'm sorry. Who?
I thought someone said Amari, but my name's Armani. But I'll go because I haven't heard
No,
Amari.
Amari Paris.
Did he come off mute?
Jeffries is requesting.
I can't see people's faces, so Amari, go for it.
No, go ahead, Armani. I don't want to keep people on there. There'll be more opportunities to continue.
Well, I guess my thought is, what I'm hearing is there a potential for us to just not undesignate them and to keep them designated while still going through this process?
I mean, yes, although I think that it's clear that there are sort of, I mean, the designation would, the form of the designation, because ultimately the site is that, we don't know what the new site and what the study would lead to. So, I think that it's for us is being sort of clear about and not just extending and a false expectation of what is possible on the site here. And if there wasn't a school project, then I don't think we would have any motivation to de-designate or not extend the designation, as you've mentioned. It's just that I think for us to be able to engage with the community and the state in a process that looks at all the options that are possible that include P3, that we wanted to be honest and forthright with everybody concerned.
Okay, okay. I hear you.
Okay. All right, folks. Good
No, we
comments.
did just have one more comment from Amari if we want to let him go.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say, someone said this earlier, it's unfortunate to hear this news, especially on this weekend. 3 years ago, this weekend, we were celebrating the unveiling of the Embrace, and part of the conversations we had with the community to put the monument in downtown Crossing was that we would build on this site a center that would spur economic development. And so that the commitment and part of King's pledge, that pledge in which he died for, was about the rights of economic development in communities. And so in the spirit of this weekend, while we see communities of color under attack, while we know that education is important, I hope that we can continue a conversation where we can ensure that the future of the city, of that school, and schools across Boston have the facilities that they need and the commitments that we made to communities. Because of the history of this land, it's important that we make good on promises. This holiday is about making good on a promise, especially in a moment where they're trying to minimize the memory of this holiday and prioritize this holiday and deprioritize Black History Month and Juneteenth. It's hard, and I didn't want to say anything initially, but I just want to say I think there is still an opportunity for us to find a solution where the community gets a win, students of Boston get a win, and that we take advantage of the building opportunity in this moment. And I think we're all realizing that there's an opportunity for a building for students and that there's finance for that. And I think we can figure this out, and I hope we can continue to have that conversation and do that.
Okay. And the last thing I'll refer to is the entry in the chat that Ricardo put in. And one word, I'll say yes, Ricardo. We will look to do that for sure. And with that, I think I'm going to thank folks for their time, for their effort, for listening, and to help us move forward. This sure.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, folks.